It is usually a significant advantage to go first in the matchup. If you can be the one to drop Mountain Giant going first, you can threaten, you can make drops like Twilight Drake not even matter. Some players coin that out on turn 3, and that's a 4-8. Lines up pretty conveniently to, you know, your turn 4 Mountain Giant.
Oh, he does have his first threat, the Refreshment Vendor.
He's really looking to pick up a demon. He kept that Void Collar, which is correct, but a little bit risky in the matchup. It's not always safe to just drop it turn 4, especially if you don't have that demon.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I actually remember he said that he cut the second anti-heal bot for the second BGH. So he said the Refreshment Vendor sort of shores up that additional healing that you would get from the second anti-heal bot. And I guess the unexpected factor means that a lot of people don't play around that 4 health heal plus the body. So.
I mean, in some ways, it actually helps this matchup because you don't want your opponent to be playing Molten Giants if he had it in his hand. And it does end up helping him. Well, not fighting against Mountain Giants, but generally speaking, it could end up being a scenario where VLPS wanted to be 2 health lower, but it wasn't allowed by this Refreshment Vendor.
Yeah, VLPS knows. They've been talking about their decks a lot, trying to, you know, see what's on their opponent's mind and try and get some more insights other than their own. And as soon as he throws out the Mountain Giant, he sort of has a feeling that there's going to be a BGH waiting for it on the other side.
Starting to ramp up a little bit in the heat. Nias refuses to attack with the Refreshment Vendor. That's exactly what we were mentioning. Don't want to drop his health any lower than necessary.
So now VLPS gets initiative. He gets to make a drop on the board, and whatever it is, it better contest that turn 6 Emperor Thorson that Nias is going to have. Because that's another like very key card in the matchup. If you can develop that on a board where your opponent just doesn't have stuff, most people... Void Collar gives you a way to do that for 4 mana. It's actually the most powerful interaction in the game, in my opinion. But
I mean,
vulnerable to silence...
pretty good, I think.
What's that?
Yeah, I agree. I said Immunity's pretty good.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a little bit stronger than Sarah. It's close.
All right, well, trading in for the Dr. Boom here. Nice drops Emperor Thorson and is going to sweep 8 cards just like you predicted.
And we saw this in Purple's game earlier. One player gets Emperor out, the other player doesn't have the immediate response, and the game can snowball out of control. It's not like it'll be over next turn, but 2 triggers of Emperor Thorson is going to have such a huge impact in the long run.
Yeah, and he didn't find a way to deal with it, just had to tap.
Kill off Void Collar right now. He could deal with an immediate Mal'Ganis, but he recognizes could be Jiraxxus. I don't want my opponent having a 315 right now.
That's right.
Refreshment Walrus going to keep giving him the business.
Well, he's actually not doing anything, so he's just kind of sitting around.
Yeah, he's just refusing to attack with it. He doesn't want to make him any lower. I guess that's why he thinks the matchup's favored, because with Refreshment Vendor, he can keep his opponent right where he wants him.
Fair enough.
True.
How about when you have 2 turns with Emperor Thorson? He can pretty much almost play his hand outside the Molten Giants.
It's crazy what Emperor Thorson can do.
And Drax does get pulled out. I mean, that's a lot of combat damage that's got added to the board with you know, just needing to use his mana efficiently.
Yeah, I'd really like to see more life taps out of Nias. I think that is what we're gonna see. Unless he is going for the Dark Bomb play. Okay.
Yeah.
So.
Respecting the Jiraxxus, don't mind.
Yeah, the thing about getting this many Emperor Thorson triggers is by the time the 3rd one comes out, it's pretty easy to play your hand.
It's Mal'Ganis. Granted, he can kill it off with something like a Dark Bomb, but that's very intimidating.
Yeah, extremely. Not to mention that there's still Mal'Ganis out on the board there, just chilling.
Yeah, I was wondering if you would bump Drake. I guess we'll see Lothab come down.
A Defender of Argus Jiraxxus in the Handlock Mirror, especially since you mentioned earlier, now Siphon Soul's really not played among most players who are bringing this deck. That's tough.
Oh my goodness. That is a big game hunter to shut down the Mal'Ganis.
Like Molten Giant.
Ah, that's a good point.
Because if he's Shadow Flaming anyway, that Mal'Ganis really only has 3 health. Still a lot of
how do you do the last points of damage with
right now anyway? I've just never seen it. I definitely wouldn't say it's wrong. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, he ends up attacking into the Ancient Watcher as well. I find that attack pretty interesting too, instead of maybe tagging into Drax. I can understand why he wants to trade into it in case his opponent wants to start clearing, but to attack into the Ancient Watcher
player that's sitting down there, because there's just so many cards they're considering, cards that maybe aren't even in these decks that they're playing around. Hard to say.
Sometimes it's just an instinctual thing. Sometimes they just say, you know what, it feels like the right decision to trade here. Maybe to play around those AoE Maybe because he just feels like that's not doing any good on the board. He would rather just put that damage in now. So
All right,
I'd love to see an Iron Beak Owl here. Oh, never mind, actually. Save it for next turn. Go for the lethal. This Loatheb does make him safe to Shadow Flame this one turn, which is why he's comfortable attacking. Now it's on VLPS.
Vex is on board, excuse me. Tap for the Molten Giant plays, burns Hellfire, but he has to do what he has to do.
Yeah, if you're going to burn a card, that's not a bad one to burn.
Shields up.
yeah,
You already have Shadow Flame, right?
Yep. And he's been very conservative, that Shadow Flame. VLPS is a veteran. He recognizes the importance of that card in this matchup. It really is the most important trigger Emperor Thorson. It's always hard to keep track of how much Molten Giants cost. Because you don't know which turn they drew them.
Yeah.
You can get caught off guard very often.
yeah. Well, another thing to note is VLPS now is out of Molten Giants. So that plan from Nias to keep him at low health, that's sort of out the window because there's not really anything to play around anymore.
Have we seen the second Mountain Giant from him?
Mountain Giant, I'm not sure.
I don't believe so. Plus, second Mountain Giant is usually debatable sometimes with whether or not you put it in your deck.
No, that's true.
Oh, Nias wanted to play the Refreshment Vendor, but
That's a really weak board. He
yeah,
can,
oh yeah.
he can clean this up pretty nicely. Now VLPS is starting to draw into his threats. All of a sudden, the VLPS, it looks like his mood changed based on his facial expressions.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it's one of those scenarios where VLPS still hasn't had to use Shadow Flame.
I think we're going to see a Healbot Ancient Launcher here.
Yeah, there's no point in holding on to antique heal bots. Usually one of those things that you want to make sure you play the Molten Giants first, so that way you're not hurting yourself by developing the board. In this case, though, Nias is being able to play more threats. He's got 2 Moltens. He's got a Mountain Giant as well, and VLPS
Game Hunters have let him just deal with almost all the threats VLPS has. He's still able to develop a lot of his own this turn, and he's still in a great spot.
Yeah, even though he's sort of held on to that Shadow Flame, VLPS.
Yeah. I mean, do you see how he didn't play the 2 Molten Giants last turn? It's because of this draw that VLPS just got, that second Mountain Giant. He's aware that VLPS hasn't played a Shadow Flame yet. He doesn't want to have both of his Moltens get killed by that, because he knows, he's seen Big Game Hunter. It's really like the only way that VLPS could deal with double giant threat.
No, well, Shadow Flame would cost the entire turn if he plays Loatheb.
Oh, good point,
It would cost
good point.
9 mana. Unless Shadow Flame got Emperor triggered 3 times, it'd be 6 mana. That only gives him an opportunity to drop a 4 mana threat. So there's a lot of complicated probability and likelihood that your opponent would have things. Nias looking like he might end up going for that Shadow Flame play, though, based off the way he's attacking.
Yeah, it's just too good not to do.
What threats do they both have remaining left in their decks?
Well, Nias has those Moltens in hand, which at this rate are going to be enough. VLPS is sitting on Mal'Ganis. I don't think we've seen a Dr. Boom from him, have we?
I don't recall. I mean, VLPS will have to just play the biggest threat possible, and this Mal'Ganis is certainly that. There are ways to clear from Nias' point of view, too. In fact, it helps him. He plays Hellfire. Now it allows him to play Molten Giants even cheaper.
Yeah. VLPS may be hoping that he doesn't have those answers, but they've been so far through their decks. Almost out of cards.
Almost out of cards.
Is Nias going to let this live for a turn? It looks like it.
Well, he could taunt it up.
So he's going to use Hellfire as burn, it looks like, because he doesn't want Hellfire to kind of go waste without killing his opponent, perhaps.
3 cards left for VLPS. 1 card left
Interesting.
for Nias.
So now instead of playing the second Molten, because he knows his opponent has Shadow Flame still, he wants to make sure that he at least has a final threat onto the board, challenge his opponent for lethal. If this Mal'Ganis dies, he knows that he can use Dark Bomb and Hellfire for potential lethal.
VLPS is going to have a free life tap if he wants it. This is a stage of the game where you really have to start at live. I would actually play Healbot and Shadow Flame that, I think.
Interesting.
Maybe that's strictly worse, because actually then he would just trade the Molten.
True.
Right, so this is actually better. This is better, yeah. You play Emperor Thorson, you have a clear board. It's not pretty.
Well, I mean, Emperor Thorson would make him very susceptible to potentially dying. The last card is Doomguard.
Oh, he would have died.
He would have died. So VLPS is very in tune with what his opponent has. VLPS is also out of cards. We're coming down to fatigue.
He actually would have died anyway to Defender Vargas Dark Bomb Hellfire. So it wouldn't have even mattered if his last card
he
was
wouldn't have had
Doomguard.
minions, right?
Yeah, he wouldn't have had no minions because Defender Vargas can't buff anything. He's just Shadow Flamed the board.
Oh,
so
if he left Molten Giant alive.
Right, right. That is also a good point, too.
Yeah.
Well, no point. Now we can see why VLPS didn't really bother tapping. He's like, well, I kind of want to stay one turn ahead of my opponent through fatigue. And now it's all about resource budgeting as well as can you play very effectively around the possibility that your opponent can clear the board.
These players are very aware of what they registered in their decks. VLPS should know pretty much every single card in his deck right now, and apparently whatever is in there is not worth life tapping for.
Yeah. Well, he's been through both Twilight Drakes, both Mountains, both Moltens, pretty much all of his demons.
That's right, and he can Dark Bomb and push, and with that, he's going to be just a little bit off. But this is the final push from Nias to end this handlock mirror and send it to Game 5 with a chance to go into the next round. Defender of Argus comes into the hand.
Well, it does seem like a tall order. I think VLPS is doing the odds on what will I discard with Doomguard? Should I lead on this? What do I need to keep in my hand?
Oh, he discards 2 minions. I think he was hoping to pitch the Dark Bomb too, but that ends up being it. Nias takes Game 4. We're going to Game 5.
Wow.
To determine who's going to win this group.
That was a really intense matchup.
Yeah.
And Nias played it pretty well, I'd say.